This episode is sponsored by Michelob Ultra. Whether you're due for a beer run, stocking up for the big Super Bowl party, or just looking for a case to bring to that BYOB party, head over to MichelobUltra.com/Ultra Club now. You can order ice-cold Michelob Ultra and have it delivered right to you. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Shop now at MichelobUltra.com/Ultra Club. Enjoy responsibly. LDA 21 and up.
Hello and welcome to the 1865 match report with me, the Maradona of the Midlands. Today we're looking back at Forest's trip down to the Big Smoke as they faced off against fellow promoted side Fulham. Joining me to look back at the match is our very own Steven Toplis. Steven, how are you?
I'm okay. Yeah, disappointed after the result and combined with a bit of a cold I've got. It's not made for the best weekend, but we crack on and on to the next, as they say.
Yeah, onwards and upwards. The result itself, as I'm sure everybody knows already, was 2-0 to Fulham. Willy scored in the first half, and a late goal from Solomon sealed the points for Fulham. And it was a couple of changes in the lineup for Forest as well, Stephen. What were they?
2 changes, yeah. So Serge Aurier and Gustavo Scarpa came in from the team that played against Leeds. So on the whole, largely the same 11. And I don't think there were too many complaints with that, really. Aurier, we know how good he is in terms of defensively and away from home. I think bringing Aurier back in for Williams was a smart shout. And then Gustavo Scarpa coming in. I was quite excited to see him start and hope that he'd be able to make a good impact. So, yeah, on the whole, I think it was a decent team. It looked like a 4-2-3-1 setup with Mangala and Freuler being the 2 deeper midfielders, and then Johnson, Gibbs, White and Scarpa ahead of them. And then Chris Wood being the lone man up front. Not too many complaints when we saw the team come out.
Yeah, and it led to a fairly bright first 5 minutes, but after that, like the Forest coach heading down the M1, it went south quite quickly, didn't it, Stephen?
It did. And this was, 4 or 5 minutes into the game. Fulham play a ball forwards. Scott McKenna challenges, I think it's Mitrovic. He challenged Mitrovic, but goes down and looks like he's pulled a hamstring or something. And then within the same passage of play, Willy Boly goes to challenge for the ball and does exactly the same thing. So both centre-halves go down injured with what looks to be hamstring strains within seconds of one another. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, it's just our sort of never-ending list of injuries just keeps on growing and growing and growing. It's been unprecedented. We're not the only club affected by it this season. You can think of sort of Liverpool and Chelsea as 2 teams who have been moaning a lot more than us, I would have to say, for such big clubs about their injuries. And it just, the Boly one was fairly obvious because he sort of hooked it and he sort of grimaced straight away.
Yeah,
and you could tell he'd pulled his hamstring. McKenna maybe not so obvious why he pulled a hamstring. It was more of a sort of a contact challenge with Mitrovic. But yeah, as you say, both of them looks like done their hamstrings and they had to be replaced by Joe Worrell and Felipe for his debut, Stephen.
Yeah, so we saw Felipe come on. I don't think anyone was expecting him to have that much action at Craven Cottage, certainly not Steve Cooper. So essentially what that's done is just thrown the game plan out the window in many ways. You just set pieces, you're marking, all those plans that you make in advance with your starting 11 has just been ripped up and you've almost got to go again there on the day. So completely different centre-back partnership 5 minutes into the game. And also that meant Forest used up 2 of their substitutes very early on.
Yeah, that's right. And I think maybe you could see the consequences of that sort of disorganisation and lack of defensive stability for the Fulham goal, which came along after about 17 minutes or so.
Yeah, and it was a free kick that Fulham had. It came into the box. Forest couldn't quite clear it enough, and it dropped to Willian at the back post. He's about 17, 18 yards out. Now, there's 5 Forest players between him and the goal, and he's managed to bend this shot left-footed right into the top corner. Credit to him, it's a brilliant strike, but you'd look at that from a Forest point of view and think, crikey, how's he managed to get that in there?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, from a Fulham point of view, you think, wow, what a brilliant finish, what a display of quality. From a Forest point of view, you're looking at sort of Loddy sort of diving in a bit, and he was maybe a bit weak on his first header as well, which is a bit disappointing when you've got players like William knocking around, and sort of, let's be fair, that Fulham have recruited really well since promotion. They've got some really top class midfield players there now. There's a lot of danger around. And they showed that quality, didn't they, during the rest of the first half?
They did. Forest had a decent spell after the goal, but then Fulham got back on top again as the first half wore on. And Mitrovic, he sort of picked the ball up and sidestepped Worrell, and then Felipe put them both on the ground and forced a really good stop out of Keylor Navas, a good reaction save to keep it at 1-0. Then Decordova-Reid had an effort from 25 yards that was swerving, hit the crossbar and went away. But again, that came from Forest giving the ball away and Fulham picking it up, coming at them and coming very close to scoring as well and making it 2-0. So I think Fulham could have easily been 2 or 3 up at half time. So from Forest's point of view, only going into the break 1-0 down was a bit of a bonus.
Yeah. It was. I think they were really hanging on, and we did sort of think, let's just get in at half-time, regroup, and see if we can go again. So, as Steven says, it finished 1-0 at half-time to Fulham. So, Steven, second half, did it improve at all for Forest?
It did. Forest came out with more purpose and with the intention of taking the game more to Fulham. So, I mean, saying that, Fulham did go close again to scoring. Willy cut inside from the left and bent a shot which hit the post. So Fulham might well have got another goal, but Forest were more positive and looking to take the game to Fulham and find that equalising goal. And I think they were a little unlucky not to find that equaliser as well. They had some decent chances. The first big chance was Emmanuel Dennis at the back post. The ball came to him. He took it down and then bent it over the bar from an acute angle, which I suppose when you look at Willy and how he scored his goal in the first half, it's a shame that Dennis couldn't produce something similar and get the ball on target at least. So that was a chance that Forest missed. And then John Joe Shelvey, who I thought was really good when he came on, he picked up the ball down the right flank, bent a really nice cross in. Fulham couldn't deal with it. It came to Serge Aurier at the back post, but he was denied by a really good stop by Bernd Leno. And that was Forest's really big chance. There was one in the first half, I remember, where Brennan Johnson got free down the right, crossed for Chris Wood, who slid in but couldn't quite get on the end of it. So those were the 3 big chances that Forest had overall. But it was that Aurier one. If that goes in at 1-1 with about an hour on the clock, you just don't know then how that can lift Forest. And who knows, Forest might have gone on and got a winner themselves, or at the very least come away with a point.
Yeah, we should just for completeness sake, just say that Dennis and Shelby came on for Mangala and Scarpa after about 55 minutes or so. And Forest definitely improved after they came on. They were showing a lot more attacking threat. Maybe not Scarpa's day and Mangala's day, so maybe got a bit of a run around from the Fulham midfield. Dennis, as you say, looked dangerous and had like that header and another shot where he maybe had a chance to score as well. Looked lively. Looks like his confidence is slowly coming back, and maybe he will use a bit more. Much to the chagrin of a lot of Forest fans, I think Chris Wood stayed on the pitch, and we didn't see Sam Surridge. He's not. I've now. We'll maybe talk about this a bit later, but he maybe didn't have a great game again, Chris Wood.
Yeah, I don't know if it's where we are struggling to get the best out of him and provide him with the service that he needs to be effective, or if he's just not suited to this Forest team. Whereas somebody like Sam Surridge, I think, is more suited to how Forest want to play. So when Sam Surridge is on the pitch, he looks more threatening than Chris Wood does. And for somebody such as Chris Wood, who's got so much Premier League experience under his belt, especially compared to Surridge, I'm struggling to see what Wood's offering at the moment. So whether it's something he'll come good in a couple of games' time, we'll wait and see. But yeah, if Chris Wood's going to stay in the team, we've got to find a way of getting the best out of him, because at the moment we're just not doing it.
Yeah. And despite those Forest chances, it was a late goal from Fulham that tied up the points for them. A goal from one of their substitutes, Solomon.
Yeah, and this goal was born out of Forest pushing forward. The midfield were higher and Forest were trying to get that equalising goal. Fulham countered. And this was actually an example of the difference between the teams on the day. Fulham's passing was on the mark. It was finding feet, finding players. They moved it forward quickly. It came to Andreas Pereira just outside the box. He then fed it to Solomon, who was in acres of space down the left flank. All he's got to do is control it and fire it past Navas, which is exactly what he did. But Forest were pulled out of shape, I think, because we were trying to chase that equalising goal. Serge Aurier came across, was attracted to the ball. That left Solomon with all that space, and Fulham punished Forest. And they did to us what we couldn't quite do to them. Punish and be clinical when it really mattered. And that's becoming a bit of a theme for Forest. Certainly away from home in certain games, there's still that trait where we just cannot put teams away and really punish them.
Yeah, we lack that little bit of ruthlessness, I think, is probably the best way of putting it, where when we have the chances, you just got to score them and put them away. It ended Fulham 2, Forest 0. Maybe none of us expected too much out of the game. I think the general feeling was before the game we would have been happy with a point. And you can maybe see a little bit of quality difference between Fulham and Forest. We've maybe got a little bit of way to go to reach their level. So we're a disappointing day for the Reds, but a happy day for the Whites. And now we've got the Fulham view from Matt from Fulham Focus.
Overall, Fulham 2, Forest 0. It was probably a fair result in the end. We did hit the bar and a post a couple of times. Forest do look a decent side. They had a 15 to 20 minute spell where I thought that they were going to score. They were peppering our goal quite a bit. And fair play to Forest, the team is starting to gel and look a decent side. I definitely think there's 3 worse teams than Forest, and that the probability is that they're going to stay up. So good luck to them. It was probably difficult for Forest having their 2 centre-backs go off 5 minutes into the game. You have to rethink your game plan, whether the centre-backs are there or not. They're a key part of the game plan. So, fair play to Forest. They gave us a challenge, had a few decent chances that potentially they should have taken. Bernd Leno, again, pulling out some unbelievable stops, as he has done all season. It's pretty clear that we're outperforming our expected conceded goals because of Bernd Leno at the back. Tim Ream, again, 35 years old, and we're catching him in the best form. I don't think anyone expected him to be as good as he has been this season, but I can't believe how good he has been. But I look at him now and I think that he's a stalwart at centre-back and one of the first names on the team sheet. Willy with a fucking fantastic goal. One that I just can't believe, really. You can't believe that he's 34 and that he's still producing the levels that he is. So it's essential that we keep him for another season. Overall, fair play to Forest. They gave us a good game. It wasn't quite their day today, but I expect them to be in the Premier League next season, and it will be a tougher game next season. I think next season it will allow their team to gel as well. I can't see them making as many signings in the summer because of the amount that they've signed this season. Good luck to Nottingham Forest. I think next year they'll be in the Premier League.
At Discount Tire, we know your time is valuable. Get 30% shorter average wait time when you buy and book online. Did you know Discount Tire now sells wiper blades? Check out our current deals at discounttire.com or stop in and talk to an associate today. Discount Tire.
Let's get you taken care of.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Thank you, Matt, for that contribution. Well, a disappointing day for Forest. Probably some of the major issues to look back on are the injuries and the performance of some of the new January signings. The injuries, as we mentioned before, it's just the list keeps on going on and on and on. It's probably about a full 11 now that we can't field. Is this down to the World Cup, Stephen? The congested start, the lack of pre-season? Is that what's causing all these injuries?
I'm not sure about the World Cup as such, because not many Forest players actually went to the World Cup when you look at the squad as a whole. So,
what I mean is the sort of congested nature of the fixtures before the World Cup and sort of the lack of pre-season we had after the playoffs and all that sort of thing. Is that maybe what's contributing to it, or is it just maybe some bad luck?
I mean, it's possible, yeah, given the congested nature of fixtures and our preparations for the season, and I suppose bringing in the amount of players we've had. A lot of our players haven't had that full pre-season run-up into the campaign. So whether players are trying to pick up our training methods halfway through the season and they're just not conditioned for it yet, that might be a telling factor. It's a concern because it doesn't seem as if other Premier League teams are struggling so much with this. There's a few, but certainly the teams around us are able to put out their strongest teams week in, week out. Whereas for us, it was just as we were finding that starting 11 that we could play week in, week out, we're getting struck down by injuries, and it is one after another.
Yeah. So every week. And the thing that sort of bugs me is that they all take so long to seemingly come back from fitness. I mean, Niakate at the beginning of the season, I mean, it looked just like a hamstring. And worst case scenario, you're looking maybe at a couple of months for a really bad one. And it's been absolutely ages, 4 or 5 months now? And he's only just got back on the grass. And the Omar Richards, a hairline fracture. I mean, you'd think maybe 2-3 months for a hairline fracture to heal and get going again. But similarly, for him, he's been still not back. And don't seem to hear much about Taiwo's injury. At the time, he said it's nothing, but it's obviously turned into something quite serious as well. But yeah, I don't know, mate. There are being questions being asked, I guess, on social media now. People are sort of saying we've got to look at the medical department, we've got to look at the physios. And I know in past seasons at other clubs and even at Forest, they've looked at things like training pictures and things like that if they're contributing to it. But we'll leave that for people who know what they're talking about. The other thing that's sort of come up is Chris Wood. I've got to say, I've never known a player to be turned against so quickly in Forest history. So he's had the Bournemouth away game when, all right, he didn't really do anything, but we could say he'd only come in 24 hours earlier. He had the Leeds game last week, and there was a lot of vitriol spewed in his direction where he didn't really have the best of games. And again, yesterday, not a lot. And a lot of people sort of written him off already and sort of say, I hope we don't have to sign him permanently. What's your view on him, Stephen?
I think it's as we were talking about earlier. For one reason or another, we're not getting the best from Chris Wood. Whether that's down to him needing a bit more time to get up to speed with how the team wants to play, what Steve Cooper wants to do with him, I'm not sure. I mean, if that one yesterday, that chance, if he's a few seconds earlier, he might get on the end of that Brennan Johnson cross, put the ball in the back of the net, and he's suddenly the hero. So he was very close, actually, to opening his account at Fulham. But I think the overriding thing is we're in a position now because of injuries where we're almost relying on him. We haven't got many out-and-out strikers. So that's probably why people are not being as patient with him, because him and Sam Surridge, they're pretty much all we've got. So we need them to be performing and we need them to be producing. And at the moment, in Chris Wood's case, he's not. So whether it's better that we have Surridge as our starting striker and then have Wood coming on from the bench. That might be the best way that we get him up to speed and take a little bit of the expectation off his shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was Sam Surridge, I would have been disappointed not to have started again at this game, because when he came on, he looked a million times better in the Leeds match than Chris Wood. And similarly, the match before that, he was brilliant off the bench. Maybe there's a feeling that he's more of an impact player. Maybe that's why he's not getting the starts. But I know that he'll be feeling really sort of hard done by not starting. I think Chris Wood he looks like an awkward player. He doesn't look like aesthetically. He's not pleasing on the eye when he's on the pitch. He is what he is. He's a big old fashioned striker, and doesn't move in a sort of elegant manner. And he's just sometimes you just got to run around when you're in that bad form and try and do something. It's just really not at the moment. Doesn't seem to be ruffling too many feathers on the opposition defence and not contributing a great deal. I think the fear is that if we stay up, the clause in the contract will mean that we will have to sign him. And I think the agreed fee of £15 million looks a lot for Chris Wood at the moment. Yeah. And I think we're casting envious glances back at Keenan Davis. We could have maybe had him for that sort of money. Although he sort of has proven to have a few sort of injury problems again this season, maybe not as prolific as he would want to be at Watford. But I think people would rather have him than Chris Wood. But I think that ship may have sailed now. Anyway, a disappointing day for the Reds. But next week we've got the small matter of champions Manchester City turning up to the City ground. So that should be an interesting one. And we'll be back with a match report for that one. So thank you for listening and see you next week.
Social Podcast Network. Football Social Daily.
This week on Football Social Daily, we've been speaking to Manchester United legend Wes Brown.
And, he's knocked a few things over, kicked the boot. Mate, he couldn't have done it again if he tried.
From giving Cristiano Ronaldo lifts to training.
Nice to pick him up. Obviously, it's Cristiano Ronaldo, it's different. But when me and him are together, it's just...
Yeah. Friends, aren't
yeah.
So who really threw those pizzas in the tunnel at Highbury?
Definitely wasn't any of our pizzas, no.
Catch the rest of our chat with 5-time Premier League winner Wes Brown on Football Social Daily, available now wherever you get your podcasts.
Football Social Daily, the Premier League